Have you ever been in a room full of people talking, and the one person who said almost nothing was somehow the most magnetic presence there? You couldn't quite explain it. They weren't performing. They weren't competing. They were just there. Calm. Still. And everyone, at some point during that gathering, looked to them. Leaned toward them. Wanted to be near them. What did they have that everyone else didn't? It wasn't louder opinions. It wasn't a more impressive resume. It wasn't even better stories. It was something far more rare. Far more powerful. And almost no one is actively teaching it anymore. Today, we are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about the quiet art of becoming someone whose presence alone moves people. Someone who doesn't need to fight for attention because they naturally command it. Someone who speaks less, but when they do, every single word lands with weight. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It isn't about shutting yourself down or playing games with people. This is about something much deeper. It's about mastering yourself so completely that the world around you begins to respond differently to you. Your relationships shift. Your conversations change. And the way people treat you, think about you, and trust you transforms in ways you didn't think were possible. Are you ready? Because what we are about to explore together has the potential to quietly change everything. Let's begin with a simple but uncomfortable question. How much of what you say every single day actually needs to be said? Think about your last conversation. Maybe it was with a coworker, a family member, or a friend. How much of what you shared was truly necessary? How much of it was you filling silence because silence made you uncomfortable? How much of it was you talking just to feel heard, to feel relevant, to feel like you existed in that moment? Most of us, if we are honest, talk far more than we need to. And the strange irony is that the more we talk, the less impact our words have. It's like flooding a garden with water every single day. At some point, the roots drown. The same thing happens with words. When there are too many of them, none of them sink in. Here is the first truth we need to sit with. Influence doesn't begin with your voice. It begins with your awareness. Before you can move anyone, before you can connect with anyone on a real level, you have to understand what is actually happening in the room around you. And most people are so busy preparing what they are going to say next that they completely miss it. Think about a time when someone truly saw you. Not just heard your words, but actually noticed your mood, picked up on the tension you were carrying, recognized something beneath the surface that you hadn't even said out loud. How did that feel? Most people describe that experience as feeling seen. Felt. Understood. And it is incredibly rare. Now think about who that person was. Were they the loudest one in the room? Were they the one always sharing their opinions or jumping into conversations with advice? Probably not. The people who make us feel truly understood are almost always the ones who pay close, quiet attention before they say anything at all. This is the first skill. Learning to observe before you speak. Walking into a room and instead of immediately announcing yourself, taking a breath. Looking around. Noticing who seems energized and who seems depleted. Who is avoiding eye contact and who is seeking it. Where the laughter is genuine and where it feels forced. These are not small things. These are the entire story of a room. And when you train yourself to read that story, you stop guessing about people and you start understanding them. And the moment someone feels understood by you, something quietly shifts. Their walls come down. Their trust in you rises. And your ability to genuinely connect with them deepens in ways that no clever sentence could ever manufacture. So before we go any further, let me ask you this. What has been the biggest moment recently when you were too focused on what you wanted to say that you missed what someone else actually needed? Sit with that for a second. Because that awareness alone is already changing you. Now let's talk about something that sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but carries more power than most techniques people spend years trying to master. It is this. The pause. There is a split second that exists between every event and every response. Something happens. Someone says something. A difficult email lands in your inbox. A colleague criticizes your idea in a meeting. And in that moment, before you react, there is a tiny window. A quiet space of choice. Most people sprint right past it without even knowing it exists. The people who seem effortlessly calm in pressure situations? The ones who always seem to say exactly the right thing at the right time. They have learned to live inside that window. They have trained themselves to pause before they respond. And that pause is everything. Here is why it matters so much. When you react without pausing, you hand over your power. You let the moment control you. But when you pause, even for just 2 or 3 seconds, you take that power back. You remind yourself that you are not a machine that automatically responds to whatever stimulus hits you. You are a thinking, feeling, intentional human being who gets to choose how to show up. And here is something fascinating. The people watching you in those moments can feel the difference. When you pause, you don't appear uncertain or slow. You appear measured. Composed. Like someone who has seen enough of life to know that the first response is rarely the best one. Think about the last argument that got out of hand. Not just the argument itself, but the specific moment when things escalated. I would be willing to bet there was a single unpaused reaction that turned a tense conversation into a full confrontation. A defensive word fired back too fast. An interruption at exactly the wrong moment. A comment made before the full picture was understood. Now imagine if, in that exact moment, someone had simply paused. Breathed. Waited. What might have happened differently? The pause is not passive. It is not weakness. It is the most active choice you can make in a high-stakes moment. It is the moment where you decide whether this situation is going to control you or whether you are going to control it. Here is a practical way to start building this into your daily life. The next time someone says something that makes your stomach tighten, that triggers the urge to fire back immediately, count to 3 inside your head before you say a single word. 3 slow seconds. It will feel strange. Maybe even uncomfortable. You might worry that people think you don't have anything to say. But what will actually happen is this. People will sense something in you. A steadiness. A confidence. The message your pause sends is this. I am not afraid of this moment. I am not desperate to be heard. I am choosing my response with care. And that message carries a weight that the fastest comeback in the world simply cannot match. Now let's go even deeper. Because pausing before you speak is only part of it. The real game changer is learning to listen. Actually, truly, fully listen. Not in the way most of us do it, which is essentially waiting for our turn to talk. But in the kind of listening that makes the other person feel like the most important person on earth. How often do you actually feel listened to? Not just heard, but truly listened to? For most people, the honest answer is not very often. We live in a world that rewards performance, opinion sharing, and the appearance of having all the answers. Deep listening has become almost countercultural. Which means that when you practice it, you stand out immediately. Here is what real listening looks like in practice. It means you stop rehearsing your response while the other person is still speaking. You stop scanning for the part of their story where you can insert your own. You stop mentally categorizing what they're saying as important or unimportant. You just receive it. All of it. And then you go one level deeper. You listen for what is underneath the words. Because people rarely say exactly what they mean on the first try. They talk around the real thing. They hint at it. They lead up to it. The emotion is in the pauses, in the places where their voice tightens or softens, in the sentences that trail off without an ending. The person who catches those things, who notices them and gently makes space for them, that person earns a kind of trust that is almost impossible to break. And here is the beautiful paradox. The less you say during a conversation, often the more powerful your presence becomes in it. When you ask a thoughtful question and then genuinely sit with the answer, when you reflect back what someone has shared without immediately layering your own interpretation onto it, when you make space for silence instead of rushing to fill it, people feel something they rarely feel with anyone else. They feel safe. And safety is the soil where influence grows. Let me ask you this. Who is one person in your life you feel you have never truly, deeply listened to? What would change in that relationship if you gave them that gift this week? We've talked about silence, about observation, about listening. Now let's talk about words. There is a reason the sentences we remember from great speakers, from great leaders, from the people who have shaped our thinking, tend to be short. Not because those people had limited vocabularies or simple ideas, but because they understood that precision is power. That a single, well-chosen sentence delivered with conviction will outlast a 5-minute monologue delivered with noise. Words are not free. Every time you speak, you are drawing from an account. And if you are constantly spending, constantly filling every silence with words, that account gets depleted fast. People stop really listening. Your voice becomes background. But when you speak carefully, when you take your time and choose what you say and what you leave unsaid, every withdrawal from that account feels significant. People lean in. They pay attention. Because they have learned that when you speak, it is worth hearing. Think about the difference between these two sentences. The first. I think maybe we could possibly try a slightly different approach to this situation if everyone is okay with that. The second. Let's try something different. Which one commands respect? Which one makes people want to listen to the rest of what you have to say? Simplicity is not dumbing things down. It is the art of distilling something complex until its core truth is clear enough to hold in one hand. The greatest thinkers in history were not the ones who used the most complicated language. They were the ones who took complicated ideas and made them land. And here is something that often gets overlooked. Your tone carries as much meaning as your actual words. You can say the right thing in the wrong tone and completely lose the room. You can say a simple thing in exactly the right tone and shift the entire energy of a conversation. When you slow down, when you lower your voice instead of raising it, when you speak from a place of calm rather than urgency or defensiveness, your words carry a different quality. They feel considered. Trustworthy. They feel like they come from someone who is fully present rather than someone who is performing or panicking. This is especially true in tense moments. In disagreements. In situations where emotions are running high. Most people instinctively get louder when they feel unheard. But the most effective communicators do the opposite. They get quieter. And that quietness draws people toward them rather than pushing people away. Let's stay in the territory of difficulty for a moment. Because this is where most communication strategies completely fall apart. Conflict. When things get heated, when there is a disagreement that matters, when someone challenges you or criticizes you or pushes against something you care about, the natural human instinct is to fight back. To defend. To explain. To convince. And the more the argument heats up, the more words get thrown into it. But think about it this way. Conflict is essentially a fire. And words? Words are fuel. The more you throw in, the bigger it gets. The more you explain and defend and counter-argue, the more material the other person has to argue back against. The fire keeps spreading. Now here is the question that most people never think to ask in the middle of a conflict. What if I just stopped adding fuel? Not because I have lost. Not because they are right. But because I understand that the fire needs oxygen and attention to survive, and I am choosing to withhold both. There is something deeply disorienting about offering silence in response to aggression. It is not what the other person is prepared for. They are ready for a fight. They are ready to rebut your argument. They are ready to match your energy. When you instead respond with calm stillness, it creates a kind of psychological disruption. It forces them to sit with their own words. To hear how they sound without your reaction to justify them. Have you ever noticed that the person who stays calm in an argument almost always looks stronger afterward, regardless of who is technically correct? There is a reason for that. Emotional self-control, especially under pressure, signals a kind of inner stability that people instinctively respect. Even when they are the one who is being aggressive. Of course, saying less in conflict does not mean you become a doormat. It does not mean you never speak up for yourself. It means you choose your moments carefully. It means you wait until the heat drops low enough for your words to actually land. It means you understand that there is a profound difference between winning an argument and resolving a situation. And real influence aims for resolution, not victory. One thing that works extraordinarily well in moments of tension is shifting from statements to questions. Instead of telling someone they are wrong, you ask them to help you understand their perspective. Instead of defending your position, you get curious about theirs. This is not submission. This is strategy. Questions lower defenses. They signal respect. They move the conversation from combat to exploration. And once two people are exploring together instead of fighting each other, almost everything becomes possible. Now let's move into something that might be the most quietly powerful concept we will cover today. And it has to do with the energy you carry before you ever open your mouth. Your presence is communicating constantly. Right now, in every room you enter, before you say a single word, people are reading you. They are reading the way you hold your body. Whether your shoulders are tight or open. Whether your gaze is steady or shifting. Whether you move with purpose or with anxious energy. They are reading all of it. And they are making decisions about how to relate to you based on what they read. This is not shallow. This is ancient. Human beings have been reading each other this way for hundreds of thousands of years. And no amount of clever words will override what your body is broadcasting on a deeper frequency. The good news is that this is learnable. Not through forcing yourself to perform confidence you don't feel, but through a series of small, consistent choices that gradually build an authentic inner strength that naturally shows up in how you carry yourself. Posture is the most immediate signal. When you stand or sit with your spine tall, your shoulders relaxed and back, your head level, you send a signal that says, I am comfortable here. I belong here. I am not afraid of this room or these people. And the fascinating thing is that the body and the mind are not separate systems. When you physically take up your full space, your inner state begins to shift to match it. Confidence is not just something you feel and then express. It is also something you express and then begin to feel. Eye contact is another dimension of this. Steady, warm, present eye contact says I see you. I am here. I am not distracted by my own thoughts or anxious about your judgment. People feel genuinely met by strong eye contact in a way that words rarely achieve. And when someone feels genuinely met, they open up. They trust more. They become available to connection. But perhaps the most underrated form of nonverbal communication is stillness. In a culture addicted to constant movement, constant scrolling, constant doing, the person who can sit still with ease projects something deeply unusual. They project depth. Security. The sense that they do not need external stimulation to feel okay in their own skin. That kind of stillness is magnetic. People are drawn to it because most people have completely lost access to it in themselves. Let me ask you this. If someone filmed you today without you knowing, in a meeting, in a social situation, in a difficult conversation, how would you carry yourself? What would your body be communicating? And is that the message you want to be sending? Let's talk now about something that builds over time. Something you cannot buy or perform your way into. Your reputation. Here is a truth that people often find both inspiring and uncomfortable. Your reputation is not what you say about yourself. It is the sum total of every action you have ever taken, every promise you have kept or broken, every time you showed up when it was inconvenient and every time you didn't. It is built in the quiet moments that no one is watching. And it speaks for you in every room you enter, including the rooms you have never stepped foot in. People who have built strong reputations do not need to constantly reintroduce themselves or re-explain their value. Their track record does that work for them. They can walk into a negotiation, a collaboration, a difficult conversation with far less resistance than someone who has not invested in this invisible currency. Because trust has already been established before anyone has said a word. The foundation of a strong reputation is simple but demanding. It is the consistency between your words and your actions. Nothing erodes trust faster than a gap between the two. And nothing builds it more powerfully than closing that gap completely, over and over and over again, even when no one is watching. Think about someone you deeply trust. Not just someone you like, but someone you would trust with something that genuinely matters to you. What is it specifically that earned that trust? I would guess it was not a single impressive moment. It was probably a series of smaller moments. Times when they followed through without being reminded. Times when they told you an uncomfortable truth instead of what you wanted to hear. Times when their actions and their words were the same thing. That is what you are building. Not an image. Not a brand. An actual, lived integrity that people can feel. And when you have that, your influence operates on a level that requires almost no effort. Because people are already inclined to believe you, follow your lead, give you the benefit of the doubt, recommend you to others. Your reputation is working for you around the clock without you having to do anything except continue being who you genuinely are. The flip side of this is important to name. Reputation, once damaged, is extraordinarily difficult to rebuild. Not impossible, but it requires years of consistent behavior to overcome a single significant breach of trust. This is why the small choices matter so much. The small promise you keep when no one would have noticed if you didn't. The small act of honesty when a comfortable half-truth would have been so much easier. Every one of those deposits is compounding quietly in the background. Now let's touch on something that takes real courage. Knowing when to walk away. Most of us have been taught, in various ways, that persistence is always a virtue. That staying and fighting and explaining and not giving up is the noble path. And sometimes it is. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do for yourself and for your influence is to quietly remove yourself from a situation that does not deserve your energy. Not every conflict is worth your voice. Not every argument needs your rebuttal. Not every toxic situation requires you to stay and try to fix it. Sometimes the most influential move is the one where you step back, where you refuse to engage, where your composure speaks more clearly than any argument you could have made. Think about the difference between someone who always has something to say, who always engages, who always needs to prove their point, and someone who is selective. Someone who knows when to enter a conversation and when to let it pass. Who do you trust more? Who seems more grounded? Who seems to have a clearer sense of their own worth? Walking away is not about indifference. It is about understanding that your attention and your energy are finite resources. Every moment you spend on something that drains you is a moment you are not investing in something that builds you. And when you start treating your energy that way, like something precious that deserves to be spent wisely, other people sense it too. They sense that your involvement means something. That your engagement is not a given. And that changes the dynamic completely. There is also this. When you walk away from something without drama, without the need for the last word, without a performance of wounded dignity, you send a quiet but unmistakable message. You do not need this. And the people who observe that, who see someone choose peace over winning, always leave with a deeper respect for that person than they came in with. Ask yourself this. Is there a situation in your life right now that you keep returning to, keep engaging with, keep feeding with your attention, not because it is genuinely getting better but because leaving it feels uncomfortable? What would it mean for you, and for your sense of self-worth, to simply step away? Let's talk about something that lives at the heart of all of this. The difference between speaking to impress and speaking to inspire. There is a particular kind of speaking that most of us do more than we would like to admit. It is the kind where, underneath the words, the real goal is to be seen a certain way. To be perceived as smart or successful or interesting or important. It is speaking as a performance. And people can almost always feel it, even when they cannot name it. And here is the cruel irony. The more obviously you are trying to impress someone, the less impressed they actually feel. Because what you are communicating underneath the performance is insecurity. You are saying, in effect, I need you to think well of me. And people do not follow those who need their approval. They follow those who do not. Speaking to inspire is a completely different experience. When you speak from a place of genuine care for the person in front of you, when your goal is to add something to their life rather than gain something from their perception of you, everything about the conversation changes. Your tone becomes warmer. Your words become simpler. Your attention moves from yourself to them. And they feel it. People do not remember most of what you say. But they almost always remember how you made them feel. Did they leave the conversation feeling more capable, more understood, more hopeful than when they arrived? Or did they leave feeling like an audience to your performance? The answer to that question is your real legacy in every interaction. Stories are one of the most powerful ways to move from impressing to inspiring. Not elaborate, polished stories designed to showcase your wisdom. But real ones. Honest ones. Stories that reveal something true about a struggle you faced, a mistake you made, a moment where you did not have it all figured out. Those stories create connection in a way that polished expertise never does. Because they make you human. And humans connect most deeply with other humans, not with performances of perfection. What is one honest story from your own life that, if you shared it at the right moment, might genuinely change how someone else sees their own situation? Hold on to that. Because that story has real power. Now let's think about timing. Because you can have the most profound insight in the world, the perfect word, the most relevant story, and if you deliver it at the wrong moment, it lands like nothing at all. Timing is the variable that most people skip over entirely. They focus on the content of what they want to say and almost never think about when to say it. But the timing of your words can be the difference between them opening a door and them closing one. Think of it this way. Have you ever had a great idea that got dismissed, and then weeks later someone else said almost the same thing and suddenly everyone was on board? What changed? The idea was the same. What changed was the context. The readiness of the people around you. The moment. The most influential communicators are students of the moment. They have learned to read the emotional temperature of a room, of a relationship, of a specific conversation. They understand that a message delivered when someone is overwhelmed, defensive, or emotionally raw is almost certain to be rejected. But that same message delivered when the person is calm, receptive, and in a headspace where they can actually receive it, can change everything. This requires patience. Real patience. The kind where you hold your insight quietly, wait for the right conditions, and then offer it at the moment when it can actually be heard. It requires you to care more about the impact of your words than about the immediate relief of saying them. And here is something worth considering. Silence itself can be a form of perfect timing. There are moments in conversations where the most powerful thing you can contribute is nothing at all. A pause that gives someone the space to keep going, to say the thing they almost said but held back, to reach their own conclusion rather than having one handed to them. Those moments of silence are not empty. They are full. Full of space and trust and invitation. And the people who learn to create them, who learn to sit in the quiet without filling it with noise, become the people that others seek out for the most important conversations of their lives. We are coming toward the end now, and I want to close with the deepest idea of everything we have covered. Because all of these skills, the observation, the pause, the listening, the careful words, the body language, the reputation, the timing, they are all expressions of the same thing at their root. Quiet confidence. Not the loud, performed version of confidence that needs a room full of people to acknowledge it in order to feel real. Not the confidence that collapses the moment someone challenges it or withdraws their approval. But the deep, steady, unshakable kind that comes from knowing who you are and not needing anyone to confirm it. This is the quality that underlies every great communicator, every genuine leader, every person who naturally draws others toward them without trying to. It is not a personality trait you are born with or without. It is something built. Quietly. Day by day. In the choices that no one sees. It is built every time you keep a promise you made to yourself, even when breaking it would have been easier and no one would have known. It is built every time you choose honesty over comfort. Every time you do the work of preparation so that when the moment comes, you are ready. Every time you face something difficult without running from it. Every time you treat yourself and others with the kind of respect that does not require external permission. When this inner foundation is strong, everything else flows from it naturally. Your pauses carry weight because you are not afraid of silence. Your listening is genuine because you are not consumed by the need to be heard. Your words land with impact because they come from a place of clarity rather than anxiety. Your presence commands respect because it does not need to demand it. And here is what I want you to carry with you from today. Influence in its deepest form is not something you do to other people. It is something that flows from who you are. The most influential people throughout history, in business, in relationships, in communities, were not the loudest or the most aggressive or the most relentless. They were the ones who had done the inner work. Who had become, through years of quiet effort, so authentically and solidly themselves that other people naturally wanted to be near them, to trust them, to follow them. That is the journey you are on. And it does not require a dramatic transformation. It requires a series of small, consistent, intentional choices. Every conversation where you choose to listen before you speak. Every difficult moment where you choose to pause over the reaction. Every time you choose your words with care instead of convenience. Every day where you show up for yourself in the quiet moments when no one is watching. These choices compound. Slowly at first. Then in ways that surprise you. People begin responding to you differently. Your relationships deepen. Your voice carries further. The doors that used to require effort begin opening more easily. Not because you have mastered a set of techniques, but because you have become someone worth trusting. Someone worth listening to. Someone whose silence speaks, and whose words, when they come, are worth waiting for. In a world that never stops making noise, be the one who knows how to be still. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand the difference between speaking and meaning something. That difference is everything. And now that you understand it, you get to choose, in every single conversation, every single day, which kind of communicator, which kind of presence, which kind of person you are going to be. Speak less. Mean more. And let the quiet strength you are building become the most powerful voice in every room you enter.